By whose decease the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is solely and rightfully come to the Prince William. We, therefore, the Lords Spiritual and Temporal of this realm, and members of the House of Commons, and representatives of the realms and territories, aldermen and citizens of London and others, do now hereby, with one voice and consent of tongue and heart, publish and proclaim that the Prince William become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of his other realms and territories, King, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faiths, to whom we do acknowledge all faith and obedience with humble affection.
All right, take a breath for a second, because what I'm about to walk you through is one of those moments where history stops feeling like something in a textbook and starts feeling uncomfortably real. The kind of moment where even people who swear they don't care about the royals suddenly look up from their phones and go, wait, what just happened? By whose decease the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is solely and rightfully come to Prince William. That sentence alone carries centuries of weight. It's formal, almost cold on paper, but behind it is a family shattered, a nation stunned, and a monarchy forced to move forward whether it's ready or not. And yeah, before we go any further, if you're into royal history, quiet scandal, emotional moments nobody expected, and the behind-the-scenes stuff that never makes the official press releases, you might want to hit subscribe now. Just saying. This story unfolds slowly, and it hits harder the deeper you go. The United Kingdom plunged into mourning almost instantly, and I don't mean metaphorically, I mean physically. Flags dropped to half-mast everywhere, from Buckingham Palace to tiny village halls most tourists will never see. London felt quieter, not empty, just muted, like the volume knob on the entire country had been turned down. When Buckingham Palace released that simple, devastating statement in early July 2025, confirming the passing of King Charles III after a prolonged illness, it felt unreal. Charles had waited longer than any monarch in British history to become king, and now his reign, still so fresh in many people's minds, had ended far sooner than anyone wanted to imagine. Operation Menai Bridge was triggered immediately. That's the code name, by the way. Chilling, right? Every monarch has one, carefully planned, rehearsed, updated, filed away for the day nobody wants to arrive. And suddenly, it wasn't hypothetical anymore. For the next 9 to 10 days, the country entered official mourning. Sports paused. Comedy shows quietly disappeared from schedules. News anchors dressed in black. Even people who couldn't tell you the line of succession if you paid them felt the shift. There's something about a king's death that cuts across opinions. It's not politics, it's continuity snapping, just for a moment. Crowds gathered outside royal residences almost immediately. Flowers, candles, handwritten notes, some shaking hands with strangers, some crying openly, others just standing there, silent. And on TV, the same images looped again and again. Charles as a boy walking behind his mother's coffin. Charles as a prince talking endlessly about the environment before it was fashionable. Charles finally crowned king, looking almost overwhelmed by it all. But while the public mourned, something much quieter and far more personal was happening behind palace walls. Prince William became King William V in the same instant he lost his father. Let that sink in for a second. One moment you're a son, the next you're the head of state for over a dozen realms, the head of the Commonwealth, and the symbolic anchor of an entire country. No pause button, no grace period. Sources close to the family say William gathered his siblings and children privately in those first hours. No cameras, no aides hovering, just family. He spoke about his father's humor. Yes, Charles had a surprisingly dry human of humor, and his relentless sense of duty. And apparently, that's where William's voice finally cracked, because grief doesn't care about crowns. And if you think this was just a formal, distant royal affair, think again.
This was a family tragedy, one that in a strange way pulled them closer. Princess Anne, never flashy, never sentimental in public, was reportedly a pillar of steel. If you watched Queen Elizabeth II's final days, you already know this about her. Anne doesn't perform grief. She carries it. She stayed with Charles in his final moments, just as she had done with their mother. No drama, no statements, just presence. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, took on a different but equally crucial role. While managing her own emotions and her own recent health challenges, she focused on the children, explaining loss in language that doesn't scare them, preparing them gently for what was coming. And yes, if you're wondering, that included Prince George stepping closer to a future he didn't choose this early. One palace insider described a moment that honestly feels too human to be real. William and Anne sitting late at night, surrounded by old photo albums, laughing through tears about Charles's obsession with organic gardening. Apparently, if you got him started, you were stuck for at least a half hour. Relatable king behavior, honestly. Catherine quietly organized small family gatherings during those days. Nothing formal, just space, tea, silence when needed. She understands something crucial about grief. You can't rush it, but you can soften it. And that humanity, that's what changed the tone of everything that followed. When the funeral plans began to take shape, something unexpected became clear. Princess Anne and Catherine would lead the procession. That alone raised eyebrows. Traditionally, women rode in carriages, walked behind the scenes, played supporting roles. Not this time. Anne stepped forward first, dressed in her naval uniform, every inch of the disciplined royal workhorse she's always been. This wasn't performance, this was muscle memory. She's done this before. She knows exactly what duty costs, and she pays it without complaint. During the lying in state, Anne stood vigil beside her brother's coffin, echoing the historic barrier-breaking moment she had had with her mother. Watching her stand there, still, unflinching, was one of those moments that made even hardened royal watchers swallow hard. And Catherine walking beside her, that was a statement without a single word. Calm, composed, steady, her black veil nodding to tradition, her presence signaling something quietly modern. This wasn't just about mourning, it was about continuity. If you felt like the monarchy shifted a fraction of an inch in that moment, you weren't imagining it. Meanwhile, King William faced his first true test, hosting global leaders while actively grieving. Presidents, prime ministers, dignitaries who'd known Charles for decades, all offering condolences, all watching closely. William greeted them in military dress, his composure almost unreal. But there was one moment caught by cameras just long enough where a visiting leader mentioned Charles's climate work, and William's eyes glassed over. Not a breakdown, just real emotion, the kind you can't fake. That's when it hit a lot of people. This isn't rehearsal anymore. This is the rain. The funeral procession itself was staggering. It began at Westminster Abbey, Charles's coffin draped in the royal standard, topped with the imperial state crown. Orb and scepter, symbols older than most countries, was placed on the state gun carriage. 98 Royal Navy sailors pulled it forward, another 40 marching behind as brakes, a tradition born from necessity during Queen Victoria's funeral, and now soaked in meaning. Anne and Catherine led the way. Behind them, William walked with his siblings and children, George and Charlotte holding close, Louis, still so young, glancing up for reassurance. At one point, William subtly slowed his pace to steady his son, a king, a father, at the same time. Big Ben tolled in the distance, each strike marking the king's age. Minute guns fired every 60 seconds. The streets of London were lined with thousands of people in absolute silence. No cheering, no shouting, just presence. The route itself felt like a farewell tour of Charles's life. Westminster Abbey, Whitehall, Horse Guards, the Mall, Buckingham Palace, places tied to duty, service, and family. At Wellington Arch, the coffin was transferred to the hearse with full military honors. And then, Windsor. The long walk, ancient trees, gardens Charles had fiercely protected, bells tolling from the curfew tower, minute guns echoing across the grounds. It felt almost painfully poetic. At the committal service, centuries-old rituals unfolded, the breaking of the wand, the Lord Chamberlain snapping his white staff and placing it in the vault. Service ended, chapter closed. But there were modern touches too. Eco-friendly floral tributes, sustainable transport for dignitaries, quiet nods to Charles's lifelong environmental advocacy. This was his farewell, after all. As the final notes of the national anthem faded, something shifted again. This wasn't just an ending, it was a handover. William's reign begins with loss, but also with clarity. A slimmer monarchy, focus on mental health, youth, the environment, a continuation of his father's work, but with a new voice. Anne's unwavering strength, Catherine's quiet leadership, a family bound not by image, but by shared grief. So, here's my question for you, and seriously, I want to know, what moment hit you the hardest? Anne's vigil? William steadying George? The silence of the crowd? Drop it in the comments. Let's talk. And if you want more deep dives like this, less headlines, more heart, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. There's a lot more to unpack as this new chapter unfolds. Thanks for spending this time with me. Truly.